Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the session and giving a very wonderful association this morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. This is Balavinda. Danvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Balavrinda, Danvat Pranam. Thank you so much, Balavrinda, for joining this session and giving your very sweet association. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anybody on the call would like to introduce themselves? Okay. So now we are. So today we are very fortunate to have with us Her Grace Praneshwari Lakshmi Mataji and Hare Krishna. I welcome all the devotees to our Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call of our Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita sessions, chapter by chapter summary. And today we are very fortunate to have with us Her Grace Praneshwari Lakshmi Mataji to give the summary of Lilamrita chapter 6. Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mataji. We are eagerly waiting for the summary of chapter 6. Now I hand over the call to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Syama Supriya Mataji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for allowing me to do the summary of this chapter. So I'll start with the pranam mantras. Mama jnana tivirandasya jnananjana sarakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Sri Gurave namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Jayapataka Swami Niti Namini. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Panchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I offer my obeisances to all the assembled devotees. Thank you very much. So let me see if I can share my screen. Screen share. Okay. Share. Now, how do I make this the presenter view?
You can, there's a, slideshow, the button there on top.
Slideshow. Okay, got it. Okay. There we go. Let me move this out of the way so I can see. So the chapter that I'm doing is Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita chapter 6, entitled An Unknown Friend. So this is about between 1946 and 1952. So this is the beginning, still when Srila Prabhupada is still trying to cultivate. He's still a Gruhastha. He's still in the Gruhastha ashram. He's trying to begin his business, pharmaceutical business, trying to make that prosperous so that he can support his family. So, it's very hard to go through the Lilamrita and try to pick out things that, you think are important. There's just so much in there. It's quite amazing to see how much is in each chapter. So let's go. So in 1946, it starts. Apart from his own difficulties with business and family, Abhay saw the conflict between the Muslims and Hindus rage in India. So this is the setting. This is the stage in which this is all happening. So in India has wanted to be free from British control. They're trying to become an independent nation. But at the same time, there was a lot of fighting between the Hindus and the Muslims in that part. Now, up to this point, Prabhupada describes that actually Hindus and Muslims, they lived very peaceably together. There wasn't much conflict as much as started raging during this time. Political machinations, the Supreme Lord's desire, maybe all together. So the Muslim League, which was headed by Jinnah, wanted an independent nation, Pakistan, and Gandhi and the Hindu Congress wanted a united and free India. So conflict raged throughout many parts of India, and then particularly during Direct Action Day, which was a day that Jinnah said that we need to, I guess, make our stand of what we want. And so that day, rioting broke out between Hindus and Muslims, and particularly in Calcutta, 4,000 people died. It was very, very, dangerous, tragic time. And then throughout India, rioting continued throughout India after that. Eventually, what happened is that on July 18th, the Hindu Congress agreed to have a separate nation, agreed for partition. So they partitioned India, and Pakistan was meant for the Muslims and India was for the Hindus. So on July 18th, an Indian independence bill passed. And then 1 month later, India and Pakistan emerged as independent nations. So what ensued was tragedy, it particularly tore India apart because there are many Hindus and Sikhs that were living in that part, which had now become Pakistan. There was also very many Muslims that were living in what was called at this time now India. So people began crossing the border, going to their, quote unquote, their country. Now, understand they're all Indians, but because of this identification with the body, because of this skin disease, as Prabhupada calls it, identify with the body, identifying with I'm a Hindu and I'm a Muslim, so I have to live in this nation and that nation. Because of this identification with the body, this is what caused this conflict. And Prabhupada knew that the only way that problems could be solved was if this skin disease was cured. So, as I said, so much violence was going on back and forth within India, within what is now Pakistan, back and forth. So many lives were, hundreds and thousands of lives were lost because of this one disease. So, and one part is that, one part he knew that the only solution to this problem was Krishna consciousness. And he had a very soft spot because he was a follower of Gandhi as a young man. He wanted independent India, and he actually started in that path. But then when he met his spiritual master, he realized, His Holiness Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he realized that this independence movement is not the solution. It's eventually what happens is, he said, it's a case of the blind men being guided by another blind man. So if the people, if the leaders are completely only to material things, and they only want to, they're also sick with the skin disease. So there's still, again, bodily identification, trying to find what I can do to improve my country, improve my status, but not understanding that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in charge of everything, that he is the ultimate enjoyer. And so with this attachment to this skin, with this body identification, there can only be conflict. And so Srila Prabhupada knew that the only solution was Krishna consciousness. And he had a special soft spot for Gandhi in that case. And also he knew that since Gandhi was somebody that many people followed, if he could reach Gandhi, then maybe he could change the mind of many Indians. So that was his desire. So, and how would he do this? Only by transcendental knowledge. So this is a quote from the book. The Vaishnava prays to his spiritual master, who has opened my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge and he feels obliged to help humanity by bearing the same torch. As a representative of the eternal Vaishnava Parampara, Abhay wanted to shed the light of transcendental knowledge onto the field of current crises. That had been the purpose of Back to Godhead, although since 1944, he had been unable to print the magazine. So that one point I want you to remember, as a representative of the eternal Vaishnava Parampara, very, very important, and we'll see that later on as we get in the chapter, how Prabhupada explains that this is very, very important. And so only transcendental knowledge can solve these problems and can remove these crises that are happening. You know, all kinds, right? Adibautik, Adidaivic, Adhyatmic, right? Those problems that are created by other living entities, by our own body, our mind, and also by the devatas or material nature. So the only solution to all of these is transcendental knowledge. And that was all Srila Prabhupada wanted to do. He wanted to just spread this transcendental knowledge. So he continues to write. So even though the Back to Godhead magazine had not been printed since 1944, Srila Prabhupada continues to write. Again, this is a very important lesson. He continues to write without even thinking about, is it going to be published? Is anybody going to read it? But he continues to write, and he's working on a manuscript. Ended up being 1,200 pages of the Gita Upanishad, which was his translation and commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. He would write notes everywhere, a little piece of paper here, there, everywhere. He'd take notes, anything that came to him, and then he would sit down and typewrite it. Whenever he had time, he would typewrite on the get out, sit down on the typewriter and type it out. And he had 1,200 pages of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, he understood that Indians believed in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, they didn't forget the Bhagavad Gita. But the biggest problem was they did not recognize Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what people would do was political and religious leaders would just use the words of the Bhagavad Gita in order for their own political agendas and political ambitions. So using the words of the Lord for their own purposes. So this is what they did. And why is this happening? And Prabhupada explains, and he continues writing. He wrote to so many people. And most of the things were just rejections. But he never quit writing, and he never lost faith. This is the amazing point. We may think, oh, I have so many hardships. I'm trying to do something for Krishna. I'm trying to do this for Krishna, but things just happen. They're just not going the way. Let's just forget it. But see, this is a test. Prabhupada's feeling test. He felt everything was Krishna's desire. So he just did his part and let Krishna take care of the rest. A lesson for us from this. So he preached to many government leaders. He to other acquaintances of his. And what was his mood? I am but a humble servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what was his message? That India's original Krishna conscious culture was a successful solution to all problems. Now, one of the people he spoke to, and I highlighted a couple of letters because I wanted to highlight certain Prabhupada points out every time. Okay, so Mahendra Pratap Raja, World Federation. So this was a organization that he started, and it was called the Religion of Love. And Prabhupada, interestingly enough, Prabhupada read this book. So he did not just talk off the top of his head. He just did not. He didn't just preach from the Bhagavad Gita, which is what he should do, but he also went to the person, saw what he had to say, and actually addressed the issues, the problems that were in his philosophy, in his writings, whatever. So three things he said. First things he said that his problem with this Mahendra Pratap Raja was that he was advocating pantheism, which is that worships many gods and identifies gods with that impersonal aspect, and also the idea that you can worship any god and still have liberation, moksha. But so that was one issue. Second thing was that he said that according to this Mahendra Mahendra Pratap Raja, that service to mankind was the way that we reached this divine level, how we could help everybody. And Prabhupada explains that no, because service to mankind is imperfect, it's partial and unscientific. So remember those words: imperfect, partial, and scientific. Unscientific is what Prabhupada is honing in on. And finally, he said, everything you said, very fine, you have some great, but you have none of your statements is backed by authority. They're neither scientific nor are they universal. Because remember, even for us, what does praja mean, right? Praja means that all living entities, not just mankind, not just human beings, but all living entities need to be protected. So that's why it's imperfect. It's not impartial. So it's partial, right? And then he has he did not quote any scripture. Nothing is based on the scripture. I just put this letter on it because I thought it was really neat. Look at Prabhupada's writing, how it is. I think it's half Bengali and there's a little bit of English in there somewhere. I can't read it, but I just thought it was interesting. So, interesting enough, he kept all his correspondence. Another point, how important it is to back up everything, right? To leave a paper trail. This is what Prabhupada, little lessons that I was just picking up in here from Prabhupada's Lilamrita. Okay, so now he did get some positive responses. So, Prabhupada was, he's fulfilling his role as a Vaishnava preacher. And some secretaries and some government officers will recognizing him and addressing him as, as a learned scholar and a Swami, a holy man. But they could not appreciate his applications of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. They could not, even though he gave them, you should do Harinam Sankirtana. That will solve the conflict. That was one thing. He was telling them so many different things, but nobody would listen to him. And there were some that were a little bit more supportive, right? And here's one. So you heard that one, that Mahendra Raja was a little bit interested, but he wanted Prabhupada to read his book and support him. And so Prabhupada said, well, everything's nice and good, but nothing of what you said is authoritative. You have no scripture to back it up. Then you have somebody like this, and it's Mr. N.P. Asthana, I'm not sure, High Court advocate. He said, I am very much obliged to you for your letter regarding your broad scheme about spiritual movement. I thoroughly appreciate the fine feelings which have prompted you to write this letter and the kindness with which you have considered my query. I have been a student of Bhagavad Gita and have also imbibed some of its teachings. This is the important point. But I still lack a good deal and will be glad to be guided by a person of your accomplishment. You may kindly, therefore, send your scheme to me, on receipt of which I will be able to express my views. So interesting. Notice the mood of this advocate, this high court judge, high court lawyer. He says, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, but I don't understand it. I know some things, but please guide me. So again, authority. Again, Vaishnava Parampara. Prabhupada's talking about when he was preaching from the Vaishnava Parampara, eternal Vaishnava Parampara. The previous letter, he had no authority. He had no authority, backing of authority. Srila Prabhupada, and this high court advocate, what does he say? Guide me. So see how this is important. This mood of surrender, this mood of inquiry. Okay, so then we continue on. Again, this idea of not based on Shastra. Keep that in mind as we go on. So then the title of this chapter is An Unknown Friend. And this unknown friend is this, Srila Prabhupada is this unknown friend to Gandhi. So, as I said, he always had a very soft spot for Gandhi. He felt that if he could reach Gandhi, and he wrote innumerable letters to Gandhi, continued. And he knew that they wouldn't be read. I mean, they were probably just tossed in the, as they put in the round file, right? That nobody would ever see them. But he continued writing. So let's read part of these letters. I quoted some of these part of these letters because I think there's some things in there that we should remember also. My dear friend Mahatmaji, please accept my respectful namaskar. I am your unknown friend, but I had to write to you at times and again, although you never cared to reply them. I sent you my papers back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me that you have very little time to read the letters, and much less for reading the magazines. I asked for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply this. Anyway, as I am your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am writing to you in order to bring you to the rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like your good self. It describes that a true friend tells you the truth. There's the part in the Ramayana where I think it's Maricha, where Ravana wants Maricha to, take the form of a deer and steal away Sita, etc. And Maricha actually advises him, this is not a good thing to do. Don't do this. And he knew that he said, and as your brother and as your true friend and desiring your benefit, I'm telling you, don't do this. And Ravana would not listen. And Maricha thought, and he knew that Ravana would have killed him if he didn't do what he said. Maricha knew better than being killed at the hands of his brother. Let me die in the hands of Ram. So he, this is what happened. But see, the true friend, what he does is he tells you the truth. He's not going to sugarcoat it. Why? Because he's desiring your benefit. So Srila Prabhupada, in the same mood of a friend, said, I desire your well-being. And why is he telling you this? Another thing. I tell you as a sincere friend that you must immediately retire from active politics if you do not desire to die an inglorious death. Prabhupada called it. You have 125 years to live as you have desired to live, but if you die an inglorious death, it is no worth. The honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of your present lifetime were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within living memory. But you must know that all these honors and prestiges were false, inasmuch as they were created by the illusory energy of Godhead called the Maya. By this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you were false to them. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendship and honors obtained thereby were but creation of Maya, and therefore they are always temporary, or false, as you may call it. But none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, know this truth. Prabhupada laid it on the line. Prabhupada told him exactly what he needed to know. Unfortunately, he didn't listen. But I know, so this is another important point that Prabhupada tells him, but I know that you never underwent such transcendental teaching except some severe penances, which you invented for your purpose, as you have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with the relative truths. You might have easily avoided them if you had approached the Guru as above mentioned. So again, the importance of authority, the importance of accepting a spiritual master, and, concocting things. You can't just pick and choose what you want, which many political leaders did before, right? And of course, here also, yes, Gandhi was reading Bhagavad Gita, but was he really understanding the principles of Bhagavad Gita, or was he just taking what he could use? So food for thought, right? So we need to get authority. We need to have clarity. We need to understand the principles through disciplic succession. We can't just make it up as we go, which is what was happening here. So many things. You have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with the relative truth. So this is a problem. Again, another point about putting forth your own agenda, interpretations. Again, more of Prabhupada's letter. But if you want really to approach the absolute truth and want to do some real good to the people in general, all over the world, which shall include your ideas of unity, peace, and nonviolence, then you must give up the rotten politics immediately and rise up for the preaching work of the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita without offering unnecessary and dogmatic interpretation on them. So I look up the word dogmatic because I didn't know exactly what it meant. So what does dogmatic mean? Expressing personal beliefs or opinions as if they are certainly correct and cannot be doubted. So this is foolish because, again, no backing of authority. You're just making things up. And yet you are adamant about what you are saying, that what you say is the truth. Yet you have no backing. You have no authority. You have no scriptural backing. And you have no spiritual master, and you have no parampara, right? Disciplic succession, authorized disciplic succession. So a quote from the book: a sadhu is not supposed to flatter, but to cut. This is the basis of his friendship, that he cuts away the illusions of the materialistic person. So this is what Srila Prabhupada was doing. He was helping his friend, a friend who did not acknowledge him, a friend who did not, maybe he never saw these letters, who knows? Unfortunate for him, right? But maybe, as I said, everything is Krishna's plan. Okay, so then, and I think this is who this is. I don't know. I looked it up because I was just curious who this doctor was. So, with the assistance of Muthuswami Chetty, Prabhupada's Gita Upanishad manuscript was going to be published. So this Muthuswami Chetty knew a Dr. Alagappa, who was very, very interested in scriptures, who was very interested in philosophy and understanding these things. And so, as I said, I think this is who it is, because it says a Birla of the South. So if anybody knows different, please do clarify. But so he said, yes, he will publish your Bhagavad Gita, your Gita Upanishad. Bring it, no doubt about it. And what did this Muthuswami say? He said, so you can do the job that God has destined for you. So he really felt that Prabhupada, was meant to be. So he said, please bring your Gita Upanishad to I think it was Chennai, to Madras at that time. And can't remember, I forgot where it was. But anyway, in South India, Tamil Nadu, that much I can tell. And in South India. And he said, we will get it printed. But then what happens? The only copy that Abba had Srila Prabhupada had kept safe at home was stolen. Now, I was thinking, this is so very, very minuscule, but I remember when I was in college, and I was writing my paper for my final exam, and I was typing it up on the computer. Now, in those days, we had a big box. It wasn't these, really nifty computers. It was a box. And there, so you have to save it as you go, right? So I'm typing it away, and I'm almost done with the final paper exam. And the computer does something, and I lose it, completely lose it. And my exam is, and I have to turn it in within like 3 hours or something. And I was just completely, I would say, devastated. Because obviously, it was probably my final paper from my final degree or whatever. And I just remember that feeling. And this is so little, right? It was just a paper. Probably for me at that time, it was very important, but it was just a paper. But now imagining 1,200 pages of, your manuscript that you've been working on for 7 years or whatever he's working on, several years, or maybe 2 or 3 years working on, completely gone, lost. And you don't, and on top of that, what's even worse is you don't even know what happened to it. That just makes it even worse. If you kind of, it's like, it's like, if you know what happened to it, then you can kind of at least kind of like process that and kind of, but if you don't even know what happened to it, it's always in your mind, what happened to it? What happened to it, but he was never discouraged. And he continued writing. At this point, he started writing for the Gaudiya Patrika, and all his articles would be in response to current events that were happening there, or to editorial. If there was some editorial from somebody, and he thought it was important, he would respond to that. So he continued writing. He continued writing to other people. I'm just thinking how devastated I would be. Even if I think about it right now, the essays that I wrote for my Bhakti Vaibhav course and all that, if I lost all those, oh my God, I just can't even imagine all those. That was like definitely not 1,200 pages, but this thought, can you imagine? But he did not lose, his purpose. He continued. He was never discouraged. He kept copies of all his correspondence. He had everything. He wrote to leaders and everything. He even wrote to the Ford Foundation, telling them that they should create an association of the intelligentsia. And they wrote back saying, we don't have any plan for that. So it's interesting, right? He wrote to Ford Foundation, and now Ambarish Prabhu is his disciple. I mean, was a seed planted then? Who knows? It just amazes me, just the different connections. Now we see all these connections, Prabhupada, wrote a letter to Ford Foundation. Who knew anything would happen? And, so many years later, Ambarish Prabhu, his great grandson of Ford, is his disciple. So, we never know what's going to happen. We just continue our service, leave everything in the hands of Krishna. So, this is another lesson. Continue. Whatever happens, she's continuing. Okay, so businesses fail. They just continue to fail. He starts a factory in Lucknow. That fails. He also tries to start a business in Allahabad. That also fails. His spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, comes to him in a dream and requests him to accept sannyas. And he's like, but how can I do this? I have so many responsibilities. And so, he was stuck. He was at this point, he was actually living kind of like a vanaprastha. His wife went back home to her father's house when the businesses started failing. And Prabhupada would be traveling, doing his business and doing his Krishna activities at the same time. He came back to his father-in-law's home, did not like what was, I guess the cooking was done they were buying things from outside. Cooking wasn't done in the home. He was disturbed, so he moved his wife back and started to try to, work his business. It didn't work, but, he was basically living like a vanaprastha still at this time, almost in that detached mood, but still understanding that he had responsibilities and trying to fulfill those. He didn't just cut it and run. He didn't. He did try to do that. And then Srila Prabhupada says, somehow or other, my intention for preaching the message of Mahaprabhu increased, and the other side decreased. I was not disinclined, but Krishna forced me. You must give it up. The history is known, how it decreased. So this is what happened. It continued, it decreased until, eventually he just was focusing more and more on Krishna consciousness. So he quotes a verse in this chapter. What does it say? From the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyaham anugrahnami harishye tad dhanam sanehi tato dhanam tyajantyasya svajana dukkha dukkhitam. When I feel especially merciful towards someone, I gradually take away all his material possessions. His friends and relatives then reject this poverty-stricken and most wretched fellow. So this is what happened. He his business failed, and he could finally. He, realized that he had to just do this. And so he said, In the final division, the sannyasa ashrama, the man places his wife in the care of a grown son and fully dedicates himself to serving the Supreme Lord. Formerly, the sannyasa ashrama meant a solitary life of penances in the Himalayas. But in the Gaudiya Vaishnava lines, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had emphasized preaching. Although Abhay had not formally defined his status within the 4 ashramas, he appeared to be living more as a vanaprastha than a grihastha. He saw his businesses fail and his distasteful family situation as Krishna's blessings, freeing him from family responsibilities and turning him wholeheartedly towards executing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's order to preach. So that was his mood by the end of this chapter. And so in February 1952, he does revive the Back to Godhead magazine after 8 years. And in March 2nd, the second issue comes out, which details the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he realized then that Krishna consciousness was not for India alone. It was India's greatest gift, and it was for everyone. And he even, was making plans to send his letters, send it to the West, so to other universities to discuss. So this was his next thought in this process of spreading the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and I think that is the last slide. Yes. So we can understand. So like I said, there were so many things, many letters in there. But I picked, like I said, these letters because I consider them the most important. So what are the points that we can gain from this chapter? From this chapter in the life of Srila Prabhupada. So number 1, scriptural authority is necessary. We cannot put forth anything of our own. It must be backed up by scripture. And Hari Parashad Prabhu always, when he states something, he always says, "Oh, let me pull this out." We may not have that degree of transcendental knowledge, but as long as we stick to what Srila Prabhupada is saying, as long as we stay with the Guru Parampara, then we don't have any worries. Number 2, that no matter what happens, we should always not be discouraged. Continue the process, no matter what difficulties, what problems we have in place. And number 3, always follow in a line of, take initiation from spiritual master in authorized disciplic succession. So it would be authorized parampara. So those are the 3 points that I gleaned from this. And also understand, and Srila Prabhupada understood, everything was Krishna's plan. Krishna forced me. So understand that Krishna's hand is in everything. And we just need to do what to our best of our knowledge, through the help of Sadhu, Sastra, and Guru, do what is our duty, do what is our service, and continue this progress on the spiritual path. And also, Hare Krishna, I was going to say one more thing and I forgot it. Krishna, it's important. You need to remind me. And not be discouraged. I can't remember what it was, but maybe it'll come to me. But thank you very much for allowing me to share. Like I said, this was so much in this chapter. Oh, I know what I was going to share. I was going to think. And, I'm just thinking, if Srila Prabhupada Gita Upanishad had been published there, if he had, been able to make some kind of leeway or had been able to connect with Gandhi, would I have met him? Would he have come here? So, I like to think, I don't know if it's mental speculation or mental concoction, but I like to think that that Krishna wanted to bring us all closer, right? That for my sake, for our sake, Srila Prabhupada came here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Panchakalpatarubhyasya krupasandhyavicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Anything, like I said, if there's anything that I said mistakenly, please excuse me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Praneshwari Mataji. What a lovely, 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 lovely session it was. And I really like the way you went through the contents so carefully and explained the letter of Srila Prabhupada to Gandhi. I really liked a few points you stressed, like how he was a true friend and how sometimes, you mentioned on three things. One is unscientific, imperfect, and then incomplete, or rather, partial. That's what he said. And all these 3 points you elaborated on and explained to us how it was like that. That part was very beautiful. Yes, indeed, and unscientific, indeed incomplete, because it did not it just addressed mankind. It didn't address all living entities.
Right.
And of course, it was, what was the other thing? Partial.
Unauthoritative. Without authority.
Without authority, yes, without any authority. And even how Srila Prabhupada was mentioning that many of the austerities that he took up did not even have any proper backing.
Yeah.
Because satyagraha, fasting till death or whatever, none of it had spiritual backing. So it was very interesting. It was very interesting even how Prabhupada was telling, you're going to die an inglorious death. Please don't do this. And, pretty much he predicted a lot of things.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to know this, Mataji. I really like the way you elaborated it. Whenever I read it by myself, I don't get much out of it. But I think you pulled out a lot of information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Praneshwari Mataji. What a wonderful summary, Mataji. First thing I felt hearing your class, entire summary, Mataji, it was like a soothing effect for me. It was so very, very nice to hear the summary from you, Mataji. I felt the soothing effect from starting to the ending, and mainly some points I liked from your summary, Mataji. First is, as Priti Mataji said, that the 3 concepts of human life and how we are not complete, all these things, that's very wonderful. And the letter, that is also very nice. And you shared your personal thing at your exam, Mataji, how you felt.
Yeah.
And you related this to Srila Prabhupada's missing of his Gita Upanishad's papers, 1200 papers. It's not a joke. His entire 7 years was gone into waste. But his mood we have to inculcate. The way you said is, that is the point we have to take it. Everything is at the will of Krishna's mercy. It's all going to be happening. So that is, we have to take it. That is also very wonderful, Mataji. I can understand, I can see the pain, how you felt at that moment. And the same thing, we will also at some point of life, we are having this kind, but we have to take that mode. And at the last, what you said is summary also, Mataji. We have to take every time the Shastra's reference. Without that, we cannot, in the air, we cannot quote anything and we cannot support the statements. Those are also very nice, Mataji. And all over, everything is very smooth and soothing effect, Mataji, I got from reading the chapter summary, Mataji. Very, very wonderful, Mataji. And I'm very glad I got this opportunity to hear from you, Mataji, this summary. I would like to again read this summary, Mataji, chapter summary, listen from your recordings. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sophia. Shama Sophia, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Dear devotees, anybody would like to share your realizations for Mataji's summary?
Hare Krishna, Praneshwari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji. Very, very beautiful summary. In the beginning, it was like, oh, we are in a history class here.
No, and for you guys, this is all history. I mean, you've studied this history, right? I haven't.
Oh, yes, that is true.
Right?
Yes, Mataji. Yes, it was like sitting in a history class, and then all of a sudden you brought in the definitely the devotional aspect to it, and a very beautiful class, Mataji. Like what you were talking about, even in our own discussion groups over here, we were also thinking, what if we got that original version of Gita Upanishad that Srila Prabhupada had written? How would it have been? Would it be like the one that we have today, the Bhagavad Gita as it is? Because it would be so different. Srila Prabhupada, his understanding of the whole world would be based on how it is in India, not like how it is in the West. So many things would have been different. Like he always talks about the moon and, the going to the moon in his purpose. So many things would have been different in that book. So always wondering. But thank you so much for such a beautiful class, Mataji. So many important points, and definitely have to focus on the Shastras. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Dandavat Pranam, so beautiful narration and such a, I mean, what I could see is your love for Srila Prabhupada. The whole, I could see that that's a thread that's connecting all the pearls of the different stories that you were saying. And very nice. I mean, actually, we were with Prabhupada at that time when you, I mean, that's what I feel when you narrated, you actually took us back there. And I mean, he can be called as a synonym for determination and not getting discouraged. Not even a bit. He says that the material life is decreasing, but somehow my thing is increasing to do devotional service. So thank you for pulling out all those main points, his letters and what he feels and what he writes. And really, it was a beautiful narration, summary, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
I'm just amazed at how much we get out of doing a summary, because when we read, we just kind of read it like a book, like a novel. You know what I mean? We don't really study it; we just kind of read it. But then when you have to do a summary about it, you're like, oh my God, to make all these connections. It's just quite amazing. So thank you. I think it was Syama Supriya was the one that wanted to do summaries, or was it you, Lalitangi? All of you, you all.
So all of us together, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking. So what an amazing thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Praneshwari Mataji. So nice to hear from you after a long time. And I'm unfortunate that I can't join all the time because I have another class. Yeah. But it's so nice. And I really like, as you said, that summary part. I would have never thought about, all these important details are now more easily carved than when you just read. Yeah. And the determination part, which Lalitangi Mataji was saying, that as you had just given an example, I did lose some of my essays to my old computer and I had to redo it. And I was so frustrated. And I was just thinking, if I was a real devotee, I should have been happy to read Bhagavatam, to write the essay. But so much of determination Prabhupada had that he didn't find it, he didn't find any effort at all. And he had no attachment to losing things. I mean, it's just amazing. I can't even start understanding. But thank you, Mataji. I mean, you've really worked all the hard work you did and just gave the pearls of important stuff to us. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Shukeshwari Mataji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. What a beautiful summary, Mataji. Thank you so much for such a beautiful summary. And how in Indulekha Karuna, Mataji was saying it was like a history class about the war and everything. I could.
Do you now differentiate between Vrinda Mataji and Indulekha?
Can I differentiate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Now can you differentiate?
No. Yes. Now I could tell. Now I can tell a difference.
Virtually, you can.
Virtually, I can. Well, no. Well, I know, but see, Vrinda hasn't spoken yet.
Vrinda Mataji is not there, I guess.
Right. I mean, what I mean to say is, well, I guess Indulekha's voice is now registered in my head, so maybe I won't mix them up.
Go ahead, Vinita Mataji.
Okay. So very, very beautiful class, Mataji. Thank you so much. Your classes, not only this, anything that you speak, it comes from the heart. And I feel like initially when I started to speak to you, I would not understand anything your accent. But now I can catch each and every word of yours. And it is so nice, Mataji. When you speak, it comes from the heart and it makes us to understand your feelings. Very nice, Mataji. So beautiful. And any services that we are doing on the name of humanity or help for the people, but without God consciousness, it's no use of doing it. It's just waste. Yesterday's Guru Maharaj lecture was also like that, same point. Until and unless we could remember, we could give Krishna to the whole world, then the whole problems are solved. Otherwise, the problem keep on coming.
Yeah.
People try to cheat each other, and there is no happiness for us. Yeah, very, very nice class, Mataji. Thank you so much. And the letter that you put, the old letter that Srila Prabhupada has written, it is so nice to see that. I don't know where from you got that. Very, very beautiful, Mataji. Thank you. What do you want to say?
I want to say very beautiful class, Pareshwar Lakshmi Mataji.
Thank you. Thank
You got disconnected, I guess.
Frozen.
Mataji, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I don't know. It seemed to be frozen for a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mataji. What were you saying?
I said thank you very much, Balavrinda.
Thank you, Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna Paneshwari Mataji, Koti Koti Dandat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai. You are the example, Mataji, for all of us. How you digest all the stories, and Mataji, your class is always very nectarian and very, very inspiring. Koti Koti Dandat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Gopinath Ki Jai.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting your camera on. So I just see my face in here. I don't want to see my face here.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So anyone would like to share realizations for Mataji's summary today? Or else with Mataji's permission, with all the devotees' permission. So we can end today's session.
Yeah,
was there a question on there?
Yeah, there's
let me see, Mataji. Okay, Mataji, who is the title unknown friend referring to, and the context here, Sukhasagari Mataji.
Okay, so the unknown friend is Srila Prabhupada. So he wrote the letter to Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the context of it. He said, "I am writing to you as your unknown friend, that the path you're on is going to lead to your destruction." Basically, I mean, more or less, that's what he said. Mm-hmm. So he isn't. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, very good. Yeah.
Okay, so Mataji, thanks again for this very, very sweet summary of chapter 6. So this, I would like to pay my obeisances to you and all the devotees on the call. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Leelamrita ki jai, High Grace Paneshwari Mataji ki jai.
All glory to Srila Prabhupada, all glory to Srila
Hare Hare.
Hare Bol.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.